Doctor, come quickly! Something's wrong with Meg!
I'll try the Hippocratic method. I think she's fine. Welcome to our review of Hippocrates. Is that right? I've been saying it wrong on purpose to annoy Tally so much it sounds wrong now. Either way, Hippocrates is a game where you play as one of Hippocrates' acolytes, and you're tasked with essentially ensuring that the Hippocratic methods live on after his death. And obviously the best way to do that is to have a big old competition with your fellow doctors about who can treat the most patients.
Absolutely. This has some Euro elements, some puzzle elements, and also an element of luck. You'll be accepting new patients, hiring doctors, and buying medicine, and then trying to make everything fit together. This game is strangely engaging, which is why we've decided to cover it here. We really loved the simplicity of the rules mixed with the crunch of making everything fit neatly together. But it's not without its issues, so let's take this box to the surgery room and have a little dissection.
Hippocrates is played over 4 rounds, and each of these rounds will have several different sub-phases. But you always begin the round by rolling the patient dice and then matching them with the respective patients. And this just shows you which patients are available to be taken. In player order, from left to right of these markers, you will move your marker to an empty column, then you'll take the patient next to the die in that column. However, you can manipulate this using your assistant tokens, all of which will work in a different way, helping you get another patient if that one isn't for you. However you get your patient though, there will be a reward, maybe a punishment printed below this patient that you will also get. Now, you'll repeat this phase 3 times in a row, each round, and obviously sometimes there might be a die next to a place without a patient. If that column is free, you can still go there. You won't get a patient, but you'll get the reward printed inside the patient box rather than the one below it. Once you have your patients, they'll actually pay you to treat them. However, you'll have to spend that money to then pay your doctors. And the cost of a doctor is based on where you are in this reputation track up here. After this, with the remaining money you'll have a chance to buy medicine, which you need to spend to treat patients, and doctors, who you need to treat patients. So you kind of only get one shot at this, where you could buy a doctor, you could buy a medicine bag, or you could buy both from the same column, in which case you get a little bonus tile. In the last part of the round, you're going to take your medicine, your patients, your doctors, and attempt to do some healing. Patients require specific amounts and types of medicine to be cured, whereas doctors require specific numbers of patients to be treated by them to retire. And retiring doctors and curing patients is the main way you get victory points. So you want to do it the most efficient way possible. Firstly, because doctors, you have to pay them every round, so the quicker they retire, the less you have to pay. And patients, because if you don't treat them, they will go from your treatment room to your emergency room. If you don't treat them again, they'll go from the emergency room to dead. And they'll give you negative points at the end of the game. Now, quite obviously, the way that this works is whoever has the most victory points at the end of the 4th round will be the winner.
What Hippocrates does exceptionally well is provide choices to the players. At almost each stage of the game, there is some interesting decision to be made, and you constantly feel engaged because you're always weighing up the different options. When it's your turn to pick a patient, not only do you have to consider which patient you want, but also the reward that they're going to give you. Which decision is most important at that given time? Then, not only that, you have to consider the VP the patient will give you versus the money that they're going to pay you. You only win by scoring VP, but you really can't do much without getting money. Then there are all of the interesting decisions around buying doctors, such as do you go for a bundle or not and try to save some money? Do you put a deposit down on a doctor before seeing all of the other available doctors that round, and so on?
So, obviously not a great game for people with serious AP, because every decision you make in this game has to be weighed from multiple different angles. And also anything you're looking at getting, you have to mentally fit it into this puzzle you're trying to solve. But if, like us, you like games that force you to consistently make tough decisions, then it's going to be for you. You'll probably like Hippocrates as much as we do. And in a similar vein, we really enjoy the design of the welcome track for getting patients and the reputation track for getting medicine doctors, because where you are on this track determines your turn order, so the availability of what you can get. And it's a really interesting gamble to take something you want now that will send you kind of backwards on those tracks, because you know that later in the game, you will only be getting the scraps of what other players leave. And it's just a really interesting decision to be presented with.
Hippocrates does give you manoeuvrability when trying to figure out this tense puzzle, and we really appreciate that. We love that your assistants can be used to manipulate dice, make purchases cheaper, or be traded in for a vial of medicine. It makes each one you get extremely valuable, particularly because you'll often find yourself just one coin short of a bundle or one medicine short of being able to cure a patient. So being able to go, aha, I can use my assistant to get you over the line and have a big turn is a really brilliant feeling.
We really dig the theme of Hippocrates, because who didn't want to become a doctor at some point when they were a kid? Or who hasn't watched a bunch of doctor TV shows? And I think the idea of, treating patients and turning it into a puzzle is really inspired. And we love the physicality of how the doctors and the patients interlink, because it's really satisfying kind of in a tactile way, but also it's really satisfying visually, and it leads to these really wonderful end of round experiences when you're connecting and making all these complexes of patients and doctors. You have the beautiful medicine vials everywhere, making the gameplay area pop, and then you get to flip them all over as you retire or cure doctors and patients. And in particular, I actually really like that they kind of look like antibody complexes. And I don't know if that was intended, but hey, I like it. But in general, this theme and the kind of artwork and what the board game's about, it does tend itself to be leaning towards being silly, being a bit funny, a bit humorous. And that's nice. To share one of our experiences, we had a lot of laughter with introducing a friend to the game, because he did terribly, and basically anyone that entered his doctor's office was killed, and, well, not murdered, but, they died, very painful, untreated deaths. And yet, he had the highest reputation of anyone by far. And, it's illogical, but it was really funny to have this guy who anyone that walks in dies, yet all of the patients are going, hey, I want to go to this guy's the best. I think in the end we decided that this was because we're trying to do the Hippocratic way and, introduce a new way of medicine, whereas he was like, yeah, pray to the gods, it's all good. And they're like, well, we don't like change, so we'll go to the god guy. That's our theory anyway.
We will say though, this is a tough game to introduce to a new player when all of the other players are experienced. This is a game about spinning plates, and more plates are added every round. This is because in order to get money, which you need to do anything, you have to take on more patients. But then you often have more patients than you can treat. And then the next round, you're out of money again, and you have to take on even more patients. It's a really terrific gameplay system because it really forces you to make hard decisions. But the more you play, the better you're able to manage your patients without getting overwhelmed. Luckily, the game is still really fun and challenging to play, as the randomness of what is available keeps you on your toes. It's important to note though, that it's very easy for a new player to become swamped, or they make a silly mistake and end up being called the Butcher of Boeotia as their dead patients stack up. And it might take a bit of the fun out of it when it's all grind, no payoff, and every other player is 40 points in front of you.
Also, as we said at the beginning, Hippocrates is not without its issues, much like any of the patients in the game. In fact, we have 3 main bugbears with this game. And the first is that unless you're playing with 4 players, you have to include and control dummy players. Now, granted, these are quite easy to control because all you do is you yeet the highest number patient or doctor when it's their turn, but you're doing this over and over and over, and it gets really irritating and fiddly. I mean, obviously, straight off the bat, people are not going to like having to play a game and include a dummy player. And when is the last time a 3-player game asked you to have a dummy player? Second bugbear, which is kind of same ballpark, is just the fiddliness of the game. There's over 100 cardboard tiles here, and it just feels like all you ever do in this game is replenish, reveal, discard, move, and it just never feels like you're not doing admin. And for us, this is arguably our least favourite part of the Hippocrates experience, just the admin, particularly as we've played a lot of 2 players, and you have so much more because you have 2 dummy players and you're doing everything yourself. Lastly, the randomness that creeps into Hippocrates is, for us, really at odds with the crunchy puzzle the game puts in front of you. You know, this is a game where you need to give patients very specific medicine from very specific doctors, and you need to have that exact medication. But trying to fit this all together at times seems very much dependent on the luck of the draw, the roll of the dice, the turn order. You know, if you take the reputation track, being last on that track means that you pick last when you're getting your doctors and medicine. So that makes it much more likely you won't be able to treat the patients as you need to, which then means you won't get as much reputation from treating patients as the other players, which then means you stay at the bottom of the reputation track and have the same problem again. You know, it's a hole you can't get out of. And it just feels like a game that you could strategize and crunch for 90 minutes, but really it will be decided by someone who had the perfect lineup fall into their lap at the right time. And there's another unthematic rule I really disagree with, where if somebody takes a single doctor or a single medicine bag, the other players can't take what they leave from that column. They have to pretend that that column doesn't exist anymore, which doesn't make sense, and it just worsens the problem of not being able to get what you need.
And finally, a few smaller things that irritate us. We have the Kickstarter version, which comes with this XXL board, which is honestly just a bit ridiculous in size and does create issues with usability. The scoring track is very pretty and stylized, but in reality, it does make it harder to count the points. And because it's quite thin and located around the edge of the board, the counters are constantly getting knocked and disrupted. Lastly, we don't love how the fake players start with way more reputation than the real players. Creates a real feeling of resentment when you're throwing away tiles that you really wanted to buy, just because the fake players started arbitrarily with more reputation than you, rather than having that feeling of competition if it was a real player. So, final thoughts. Hippocrates is a really engaging game, there's no doubt about that. We've tremendously enjoyed the combination of theme, tough decision making and puzzling. So, whilst it's nearly a full recommendation, you will need to consider whether the amount of fiddliness here will annoy you or ruin your enjoyment.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're playing less than 4, you have to control dummy players. You're almost never not doing some kind of physical admin, and a little bit of a chore to set up. Lastly, one of the issues is just that it's a game where you can crunch for a very long time, and then a player can just have everything fall into their laps and win at the right time. So I guess with our review of Hippocrates, we'll leave it there, just saying that it's a good game, but it's one that there's hurdles to overcome if you want to play it, and you need to be aware of them. Yeah. So that was our review. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let us know. If you enjoyed it, please like, and definitely please subscribe. It means a lot to the dogs, doesn't it, Sventon?
Yeah,
see, look at him. All right,
Buzzing.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.